Well, once again, I'm late in getting a review out for the latest episode of Game of Thrones, and and the reason I'm kind of upset about that is because despite how relatively few viewers I have on my channel, at least in comparison to a lot of other bigger YouTube channels like Watch Mojo and the Angry Video Game Nerd and so on and so forth, I do I do at least respect the people who do watch my videos. I mean, I do want to get videos out to them as soon as possible. Again, in spite of how little attention my channel gets, I am grateful to those who do pay attention to it. Um, but but to get right to the point, Game of Thrones. This is where I really felt that this season shined because once again we had the big battle scene. In fact, this is probably the biggest war scene that we've had on this show since the Battle of Blackwater, I believe it was, at the end of season 2. And I was pondering, if this show is about this essentially world war in this fantasy setting, how are they able to get away with not showing nearly as many battles as something like The Lord of the Rings? Actually, come to think that The Lord of the Rings doesn't really have all that many battles either, at least to fill up its 3-hour runtime. But I started analyzing, why is this acceptable? And really, the biggest reason is that the characters on this show are written with enough intrigue and with enough care that we don't really mind hearing about the battles. Because, granted, some of this may have to do with budgetary limitations, and a lot of it does have to do, I understand, a lot of it does have to do with how the books were written. The books were written with the characters in the forefront and the war in the background. I haven't even read the books, but I know that's how they're organized. Um, and you wouldn't really be able to get away with that if you didn't care about the characters. And fortunately, I and along with a lot of other people, do care about the characters. So in my opinion, when they do have a big battle scene like this or the Battle of Blackwater, it feels all the more rewarding and a lot more eventful because this is a pretty dangerous situation. Aside from, or it's a pretty dangerous situation that poses a much more immediate threat to the characters than the usual political intrigue and whatnot. And yeah, how did they handle the Battle of the Wall? I'm just gonna call it. I mean, it probably has a different name, but I'm just gonna call it the Battle of the Wall. I mean, basically, the plot of this is that what they have been setting up basically all season was the wildling tribes coming together under the command of this guy named Mance, who's played by Ciarán Hinds. They basically come together under one banner and attack the Night's Watch at the Wall. And now the vastly outnumbered members of the Night's Watch have to defend their castle against not only these wildling tribes, but also creatures that they didn't even think existed, like giants and mammoths. So yeah, that all of this made for a pretty exciting episode with Jon Snow leading the charge. Now, I've heard some people don't really like Kit Harington as Jon Snow. I think he does fine. I mean, he looks enough like Sean Bean to make me buy, okay, well, Sean Bean is his dad, and his mom is still unknown at this point, at least to fans of the show. But I think he does a good job in handling the sort of grim solitude that basically resides at the core of Jon Snow. And as long as he captures that, then I'm satisfied. And what I really liked about Jon Snow in this episode, along with the character of Sam, is that they finally took charge more so than they have done ever in the show. Because Jon Snow, he has now become esteemed enough among his brothers of the Night's Watch to where he can take command. He can. I mean, they would be willing to listen to him. And and also he knows enough about the wildlings to where yeah, we should listen to this guy. He knows their tactics. He ate with them. He drank with them. He hunted with them. He traveled with them. He climbed the wall with them. So yeah, overall, it was a pretty thrilling episode, and you can even tell that they had a bigger budget this time around, or at least that's what it came across like when I was watching it. Because the thing with the Battle of Blackwater, it's they kind of had to rely on sleight of hand in the hands of the director Neil Marshall, and also the hands of the writers. I mean, they couldn't really go all out, Lord of the Rings or Zulu type battle, where you could actually show thousands and thousands of people running at each other, or to a lesser extent Troy. You get my point. They couldn't really have it be quote unquote movie quality, and they had to stay pretty zoomed in, so to speak, on the characters. And while it may still not be up to quote unquote Hollywood standards, it does seem like they were given more resources, and it did seem like they were more accomplished this time around at actually filming this battle scene, because the battle scene was shot with an absolute absence of shaky cam. There were many shots where the camera panned out and you can see the entire, or almost the entire battle. I mean, at the bottom of the wall you have the castle, and there was this one shot that was particularly memorable where Jon Snow got off the elevator and he just started fighting the wildlings, and then it kind of panned back and showed all of the rest of the Night's Watch and the wildlings duking it out. I mean, all of these extras, or at least I didn't really spot any holes in the choreography of the extras. I mean, it just seemed like they were really in this big battle. It seemed chaotic. It seemed like there were guys fighting in every conceivable location of this castle. And when it finally zoomed in again, it zoomed in on a separate character, the ginger bearded guy from the wildlings, fighting a bunch of members of the Night's Watch on the complete opposite side of the castle. So yeah, I really liked that shot. It really shots like that really sell the scope of this whole thing, and really remind you, yes, this world does consist of more than this room and these characters and blah 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 blah. I mean, and I would even argue it helps this world. It helps this world become more defined as a world where people could live in. I mean, when you see all of these guys, when you see all of these people fighting each other, then yeah, I think it does help sell the fact that this is a very populated world. So yeah, very accomplished, and it's not like having a larger scale battle than the Battle of Blackwater diminished from the central drama of the main characters. I mean, yeah, I don't really know these characters, the members of the Night's Watch, as well as I do the characters of King's Landing. I really only know the Jon Snow, Sam, and Commander Jerkoff. The guy with the short white slicked back hair. Oh, and I know the blind guy, but the blind guy didn't participate in the battle for obvious reasons. Oh, and the cowardly bald guy, the guy who was banished from King's Landing by Tyrion. I really only know those guys. I kind of understood. I was kind of familiar with the occasional passing mention of Pip or oh, it's that guy, and Jon Snow's talking to one of his other friends like, you need to hold that gate against the giant that's coming through there. And I said, yeah, you do that, person who looks vaguely familiar. that was really the only issue I had with this episode, is that the characters up to this point, at least at the wall, aren't really as defined, or there's not really as much differentiation between them as much as there was back at King's Landing. You know, at King's Landing, you have the Hound, you have Tyrion, you have Cersei, you have Tywin, you have Joffrey, you have Bronn, you have Joffrey's you have what was his name? Sir Meryn. You have Shay, you have Sansa. All these players I completely knew. I mean, like I just said, I could only name really a few of the guys at the wall. But with that said, they don't really try to make you familiar with this. This might carry somewhat of a more negative connotation than I would like, but they don't really try to say, oh, you should know these guys, because they do a pretty good job of establishing what kind of relationships these guys have, what kind of characters these guys are before the battle and also during the battle. I mean, the characters are defined enough to where, okay, you're not completely lost, but I'm just saying they're not really as they're not as well defined as someone like Ned Stark was, or Tyrion is. But you know, how can you ask for that? How can you ask for that on a show with this many characters? So yeah, that's really my only minor issue with this. And aside from that, like I said, the action's pretty cool. I liked this may just sound like a typical guy comment, but I really like the trolls. The trolls, or not the trolls, the giants. The giants and the mammoths were really cool. And again, this is something we haven't really seen before. Yeah, we got a glimpse of a single giant back at the beginning of season 3, I believe it was, when Jon Snow was at the Wildling Village. But this is the first time we've really seen them in action, and we see them riding a mammoth, kind of leading the charge. You know, and so once again, this world is expanding, but it never really becomes too much of a mess. I mean, I liked seeing what other creatures this world could come up with besides the typical human. And also, what I really liked about this episode is that there was this overriding sense of hopelessness throughout. I mean, they were kind of talking. It's kind of like the Battle of Helm's Deep in Lord of the Rings, and kind of the build up to that, where Jon Snow is talking about how they're just hopelessly outnumbered. That was one of the reasons they went to go get the mutineers in an earlier episode, so that the wildlings wouldn't know exactly how many people were at Castle Black. But you have Jon Snow talking about how they're hopelessly outnumbered, and then Sam going to the library and trying to read about the wildlings. And just the way that these scenes are set up, and the way that they're directed, the way they're written, there's just a real sense of, this might be the end. I mean, there aren't really any hostilities, and I liked the fact that there weren't really any apparent hostilities between members of the Night's Watch in this episode, because every single one of them realized that, there's much more at stake than just, I don't like you, you don't like me. I mean, one particularly memorable moment was when Jon Snow was approaching the commander who he doesn't like, and who doesn't like him. And they basically said, after this we can go on hating each other, but being just so you know, if I as a leader was constantly second guessing myself like you are second guessing me, then it would basically be over. So that small bit of insight, not only into his character, but also into the fact that yes, both of them can accept this temporary truce, as it were, because obviously there are bigger things on the line right outside their gate. And even admitting he was wrong, he said, Jon, we should have sealed the gate. You can rub it in now. Um, so yeah, a very human moment like that really added more than I expected to this episode. And that's not the only moment of grim atmosphere that I enjoyed. I mean, and also what added to it was the night setting and a lot of the set design. I mean, the library looks like something out of a gothic castle. Um, and and you have the candle lights basically being the only source of light. I mean, it was a really grim setting. I mean, I don't really think it would have had quite the same impact if they set this battle during the day. But you know, I don't know. Maybe the wildlings don't really fight as well during the day because of their big heavy coats making them hot. I don't know. But yeah, overall, it didn't. The battle was really improved since season two. And again, season two, the battle at the end of season two was not bad by any stretch of the imagination. But it, the budgetary limitations and the format limitations of a television show were pretty apparent in that one. I mean, by its very nature, it was very claustrophobic almost. I mean, it didn't really have that grand sense of scope that something like Zulu would have, or The Longest Day, or something like that. Whereas this one, yeah, you still don't have quite the quality of a movie battle, but at the same time, two seasons in the 2 seasons since the Battle of Blackwater, it's yeah they must have found a way to wield it with more finesse. And from my understanding, Neil Marshall directed this and the Battle of Blackwater, so I guess he's their go-to guy for directing battles. I don't know, but yeah, overall, really thrilling episode. I like the fact that the characters always still came at the forefront, while at the same time they really showcased, like I said, a battle, and a very well done battle. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see where it goes from here. And I think one of the main things that benefited this episode is that they weren't juggling 50 different storylines like they normally are. Again, it's kind of like the battle at the end of season two. I mean, season two only focused on that the Battle of Blackwater. Here, it only focused on the Battle at the Wall, and I think that helped. I mean, I think it would have somewhat diminished the atmosphere that they were going for if they had all of a sudden cut to Sansa and Littlefinger doing something, or Arya and the Hounds. So yeah, and also the more time devoted to this battle, the better. Because honestly, if they had cut to anyone else, then I think it would have felt rushed. So yeah, overall, pretty good episode. And yeah, next week is the finale. Boy, these seasons fly by fast.